Is the US dollar about to crash in 2025? Warning signs you're missing and how to protect your money.
Welcome to Question Everything, where we challenge the status quo and dive deep into truths no one else dares to. Get ready to question everything you know.
Picture this: your savings vanish, groceries cost double, and your future feels shaky as the US dollar teeters on the edge of collapse. $35 trillion in national debt is just one warning sign. Are you overlooking the clues pointing to a currency crisis? Let's dive into the red flags and what they mean for you. The US dollar is the world's main money, used in 80% of global trade and 59% of bank reserves, but it's getting weaker. In August 2025, the dollar index dropped to 97.85, down 11% since January, its worst start in 50 years. America's debt is huge, $35 trillion in 2025, up $1 trillion from 2024. The government pays $1.1 trillion just in interest, more than it spends on the military. Debt's impact. This $35 trillion debt is like borrowing $100,000 for every American. It's 123% of what the country earns, making banks nervous about lending more. For you, this means prices could rise. 62% of families live paycheck to paycheck, and higher taxes or fewer services could add $2,500 to yearly costs. Struggling families, like 37 million in poverty, get hit hardest. With 1 in 5 renters behind, cuts to food stamps or Medicaid could mean more evictions. Rising prices. Prices are climbing fast. In July 2025, inflation hit 2.8%, with food up 2.9% and rent up 4.5%, making everything cost more than last year. Your $100 now buys what $81 did in 2021, hurting 78 million Americans who struggle to afford groceries, with food prices up 25% since then. If you're already broke, this is worse. 40% of people have less than $400 saved, and higher rent could add $300 monthly, pushing $650,000 toward homelessness. Dollar losing value. The dollar index fell to 97.85 in August 2025, down 11% this year, meaning it's worth less compared to euros or yen, making imported stuff pricier. Things like phones and clothes, 80% of which come from abroad, cost families $3,000 more a year, hitting low-income folks with 15% higher gas bills. For struggling Americans, this means cutting basics. 37% skip meals as fuel and food prices rise, with no savings to cover the extra costs. Countries ditching dollar. Other countries are using the dollar less, only 58% of global reserves in 2025, down from 71% in 2001, as they switch to their own money. BRICS countries like China and India now use their currencies for 40% of trade, with China's yuan in 30% of deals, up from 20% in 2024. This could mean gas prices jump 15%, adding $500 yearly to your bills, especially tough for 78 million food-insecure families already stretched thin. Trade problems. America buys more than it sells, with a $103.6 billion trade gap in July 2025, up 22% from June, as companies import tons to avoid new tariffs. This gap could hit $1.2 trillion in 2025, making the dollar weaker and costing 2 million jobs, with factory workers facing 5.2% unemployment. For you, fewer jobs mean less income. 250,000 families in states like Michigan struggle as factories close, with no savings to fall back on. Federal Reserve moves. The Federal Reserve kept interest rates at 5.25 to 5.5% in August 2025 but plans to cut them by 0.25% starting September, which could weaken the dollar more. Lower rates might drop home loan costs to 6%, saving $200 monthly on $400,000 mortgages, but pricier imports could cancel out those savings. For 43 million with student loans, weaker dollars mean higher costs. 20% default risk rises as groceries and rent eat up budgets, leaving less for payments. Gold prices rising. Gold jumped to $3,477 an ounce in August 2025, up 25% this year, as people buy it to protect against a weaker dollar, with predictions of $3,675 by December. Countries like China bought 300 tons of gold in 2025, showing they trust it more than dollars, which hurts the dollar's value. If you don't own gold, your savings could lose 5 to 10% value, while those with 10% in gold gain 20%, leaving struggling families further behind. Bitcoin's rise. Bitcoin hit $70,000 in August 2025, up 50% this year, with a $1.4 trillion market, as people and 59% of big investors turn to it over dollars. This shows distrust in the dollar, but Bitcoin can drop 30% fast, risky for average folks with little savings to gamble on crypto. For low-income Americans, crypto's hype doesn't help. 40% can't afford to invest, missing gains while prices for basics keep climbing. Big 2025 events. The dollar dropped 11% in the first half of 2025, the worst since 1973, due to new policies and trade fights, with experts predicting another 10% fall by 2026. In July 2025, BRICS countries pushed a new payment system, cutting dollar use in 30% of global trade, shaking its role as the top currency. Trump's 2025 tariffs, like the 10% universal import levy and up to 145% on China, fuel trade wars and inflation, weakening the dollar. DXY down 11%, raising electronics prices 10%. For 37 million in poverty, $2,400 extra yearly costs and 25% higher food/rent since 2021 risk evictions for 1 in 5 renters. The trade gap hitting $103.6 billion in July sparked dollar sell-offs, pushing it to a 3-year low, worsened by debt and Fed rate cut talks. A weakening US dollar could raise grocery and gas prices by 10 to 15%, adding $3,000 yearly to the average family's expenses, forcing 62% of paycheck-to-paycheck Americans to cut essentials like food or utilities. For struggling citizens, with 40% having less than $400 in savings, a dollar collapse could spike rent and loan payments by 10%, pushing 1 in 5 renters toward eviction and worsening homelessness for 650,000. Job losses from a $1.2 trillion trade deficit could hit 2 million workers, leaving blue-collar families in states like Michigan, where 5.2% unemployment affects 250,000, without income or safety nets. Protection plan. War spending, like the $22.76 billion for Gaza in 2025, could lower America's $35 trillion debt, cutting interest and strengthening the dollar. This signals fiscal responsibility, boosting dollar trust, down 11% in 2025, and keeping prices affordable for families. Here's your plan to stay safe. First, check your money. 43 million have loans, and a weaker dollar means higher costs. Put 10 to 20% of savings in euros or yen. Buy gold. It's up 25% in 2025. Even 5% of your money in gold, like $500, could grow 20% and protect against dollar drops. Try Bitcoin carefully, $70,000 now, but start small with 5% of savings, as 59% of big investors do, to hedge inflation without big risks. More protection tips. Learn about Forex. Euros gained 3% against dollars in 2025. Small investments in foreign money can balance losses if the dollar falls. Stock up on basics like canned food or medical supplies if prices spike. Gold and crypto rose 25 to 50%, so small bets can help savings. Default risk is low, but 20% of loan borrowers struggle. Build a $1,000 emergency fund in high-yield savings at 5% to cover surprises. Hopeful future. The dollar's still strong, 59% of world reserves, and the US economy grew 1.4% in 2025. Smart moves keep your money safe. New markets from BRICS countries mean new job chances. Diversify and stay updated to turn risks into wins for your wallet. You've got this. Follow these steps, watch the signs, and you'll come out stronger. Protect your future and thrive, starting today.
Your opinion is what helps us expand our knowledge. Please share your thoughts on the question we asked and let us know what we should investigate next. Don't forget to subscribe to Question Everything and hit the bell. Stay curious and keep questioning.